Brad Pryor here with Grit Branded. We have Jay Winborn with the NCHA Executive Director.
Yes, sir.
Correct? You're going to talk about your life story, talk about how you impact or how you've been impacting the industry and the horses and all that good stuff, and what are you doing now with the NCHA and how you've turned that around and that kind of stuff. So, where are you from?
Grew up mostly in Dallas. I lived in Mexico City for a little while when I was a little kid. Spent a lot of time traveling my entire life, but primarily Dallas.
Got you.
Yep.
And go to school pretty much all through there in that area?
Yes, sir.
I got
you. We kept horses north of Denton for several years growing up, and grew up kind of riding and training horses, and although much different sport than what we're talking about today.
Sure. Well, and I've quizzed people about you because you're not a quiet guy, but you are a quiet guy.
Yeah.
You're not scared to do what you need to make things right. But on the other side, you got some pretty unique stories and places you worked and things you've done. That's why I really wanted you to be on here. We could talk about some of that stuff because me and you've never really talked about none of it. So, so you grew up in Dallas, go to college?
For a little bit, yeah. My career path shortly after school took me into playing polo professionally.
Oh, wow. All over the world, or?
Yep.
Wow. So how is that? I've never been around that sport, but I've heard it's pretty demanding.
It is. I mean, obviously you need a lot of horses to play polo, and that's primarily how my background started in it. I grew up playing, training horses for polo. We would buy young horses and train them and sell them. And what a lot of people when they hear the word polo, they have this vision of, people in fancy hats sitting in nice cars on the sidelines, and it's in England or someplace like that, Palm Beach, which it does happen there, and it's a very big scene there. But in reality, if you understand the history of how that sport started and the migration of when it came to the States, you understand how closely it is connected to the Western performance horse industry. If you don't mind, I'd like to explain a little bit of that.
No, I'm wide open.
Polo's it started in Persia. It's the oldest team sport in the world. And it was a cavalry exercise that these warring armies would use to train their cavalry soldiers with. And essentially they would come in, they would raid a village, they would take the tribal chief prisoner, chop his head off, and use his head for the ball.
Oh, wow.
So, and it was obviously a lot different now, but what happened during the Boer Wars in the 1800s, the English cavalry was over there and discovered it in India, and they brought it back to England. And shortly around the turn of the century, in the very early 1900s, it came west to the United States. On the East Coast, and the East Coast aristocrats needed horses, and they needed horses that were quick and handy and used to a lot of things going on around them. So they came to Texas and they bought cow horses, and the cow horses are the foundation of the American polo horse. And many people, like my grandfather, a lot of old time players that got involved in this game were just ranch workers and people that worked with horses. Went from making $10 a month training saddle horses to making $100 a month training polo horses. And they would put them on trains and ship them up to the East Coast and sell them. And a lot of those guys that were training the horses went on to become very big players. And for a very long time, Texas had more higher rated players in the U.S. than any other state, and it's because of that foundation that started here. In fact, the greatest polo player that ever played the game was a guy by the name of Cecil Smith, and he was from Bernie, Texas, and he was a windmill mechanic and worked on a ranch for a guy, made ranch horses, and started getting into polo, and then wound up being the best ever and traveled the world, played all over the world.
Yeah. You saying that blows my mind, because when I think polo, and this is just me watching something on TV or hearing people think, I'm thinking warm blood, tall, but I'm hearing polar opposite of that.
Well, it's, now it's transitioned. The game's gotten very fast, so we use a lot of thoroughbreds now. and a lot of mixed breed horses, but primarily the bloodlines are thoroughbred. It is fast. It's a little fast for the quarter horses. However, in the lower level, they're playing some quarter horses.
Gotcha.
It's if you look, even to this day, still a lot of the big heritage ranches in Texas, the King Ranch, the Pitchfork, the Wagner, when it was still around, they all had polo fields on them.
Yeah.
They all had a big polo barn and breeding operation, and in fact, the guy who runs the U.S. Polo Association is part of the Armstrong family from the King Ranch.
I'll be dang. I would have never thought any of that.
Then there's, to tie this all back to cutting, which actually is what we're talking about, and what my main focus in my day-to-day job is. There's a lot of these guys that once they get out of polo migrate over to cutting. We've had some very prominent polo players that have gone on to become really good cutters in the non-pro and the amateur stuff.
What do you think? Why do you think that is? Because you have all the things to pick on. Why would they pick cutters?
I think it's the interaction, between the horse and the cow. It's the action, it's the adrenaline, it's that rush you get, when you drop your hand, and it's very reminiscent of what a game is. Polo has a time limit. There's not a lot of 80-year-old polo players, but cutting, we see a lot of people. Yeah. It's womb to tomb.
Yep.
You can ride a cutter your entire life, and that's
Sure.
That's what's so great about cutting. And I'm looking forward to the day that I'm not signing the judges' checks, that maybe I can get out there and compete a little bit. So
I don't blame you. So describe the polo. How does it actually work? Because I do not know.
It's 4 people to a team, and then you have 2 mounted umpires on the field. Polo field is roughly 10 acres, and it's 300 yards long by 150 yards wide, 9 football fields, and then you have runoff on the end. And you play usually 6 7-minute periods called chukkers with a halftime in between, and you change mounts every chukker. So
really?
Coming to the field, you need to have a minimum of 6 horses. When you get up into the higher level, like you go down to Argentina where they're playing the top level, the games have 8 chukkers, and those guys will change horses probably 2 to 3 times a chukker. So each player's bringing about 24 head to the field down there. It's a whole different deal down there.
I got you. So is it kind of like rope horses, where you bring 8 to 10 horses with you, and then you save your better horses to the end of
when you need them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's kind of the same kind of mindset of a roper, I guess.
Exactly. There's a lot of parallels there that coincide. So
you're playing polo. What was your first real job?
Oh, I don't even know. I mean, probably riding polo horses and grooming and tacking for people, hot walking horses after the games. I rodeoed a little bit in high school, and actually that was my first introduction to cutting. At that time, I had a friend who was dating a gal, and her father was the rodeo coach, and it was a guy by the name of Punk Carter. And everybody who's been around the cutting knows who Punk is.
Oh, yeah.
I saw it. I worked in retail in high school. I used to sell hats and boots and jeans at a Western store, and then later went on to work at Cutter Bill Western Wear, which some of the people listening to this may know. Some people may not have ever heard of it, but it was the Western store in the early 80s, and the place to be, and obviously was owned and named after a very prominent cutter and a very prominent horse.
Sure. So did you like sales?
I did. I enjoyed it. I did very well in high school. I grew up with a single mom, so I had to work. I started working before I was 16, and as soon as I was able to drive, I worked a lot. And the funny thing about Cutter Bills is, like, at that time, Urban Cowboy was real hot. Mm-hmm. Everybody would come in and buy boots, but they also wanted a hat, and the salespeople there were more focused on selling boots because it was a high ticket item, and nobody wanted to crease a hat. So
Right.
I learned a little bit about the hat business. Sold a lot of hats, enough to where I bought myself a brand new car when I was 17 years old, and was doing pretty well for a young guy.
And I think it's very, I didn't even know you grew up single mom.
Yeah.
Or had a single mom. I had the same thing. So it's neat meeting people and in the industry and what we feel like we've made of ourselves and all the reasons not to. But I just worked, and I didn't have no choice. I just pushed through it and naturally evolved into what I am today. But so into sales, after sales, you did polo, and after polo,
So as I was maturing and getting close out of high school, I had the opportunity to play and work for a guy by the name of Preston Carter, and Preston was big. Later went on to become a big cutter and heavily involved in the NCHA. Helped with the development of Silverado. In fact, the house I believe Taylor Sheridan lives in now in Silverado is Preston Carter's old house, and tragically we lost him several years ago due to pancreatic cancer, and it was before my arrival at NCHA. But I wished he'd have still been around when I got here. Preston did a lot for the horse industry. He did a lot for polo. A lot of people don't know that Preston won the U.S. Open Polo Championship twice. Later went on to get involved in getting horse racing in Texas and parimutuel betting. Was very close with B.F. Phillips and a lot of the people that kind of pushed for that. Later got involved in cutting, had a bunch of cutting horses and was heavily involved, and also brought another friend of ours, a guy by the name of Kenny McLean, who is out of Alabama, had horses with Sam Shepard, and brought some people into the sport that were very prominent in cutting. And it's weird how those lines from all of our backgrounds kind of tie back to where we wound up. But when I got out of high school, I had the opportunity to work for Preston, and it kind of opened up my polo career. And I worked for many years training, making horses, playing, traveling. I used to go to New York. I used to go to Florida every winter, play around the country, come home to Dallas a lot and play and work here. And did that for about 15 years. And I had a little physical setback from an injury and decided that, and realizing I wasn't going to be the greatest player in the world, it might be time to look for something a little more stable, because like everything, when you're competing at a high level, it has a time limit on it. And once you reach the end of that, it's time to reassess and either stick with it or do something else. And I felt my future was going to lead me in a different direction.
Right. And I feel like what you are doing in NCHA with the NYCHA is having those roundtable talks with professionals or different people, trades for these kids, because they all want to be trainers.
Yep.
They think they're going to ride till the day they die, to the forever, make a living at it and all that. And it's not necessarily true. Some people need stuff to fall back on.
I'm really, really enthused with the way a lot of our young trainers are coming up and how smart they're being about this. The lifestyle, it's the same, but it's changed, if that makes sense.
I agree with that.
And the way people are having to figure out how to survive in this world, because there's a lot of things that are just going by the wayside, whether it be advancements in technology, cultural changes, all those things that come into play, that some of those positions that were traditionally there, that after you've gone through your life of training or after you decide to make a career change, those opportunities are not necessarily there.
Right.
And I look at some of the things that some of our trainers are doing and some of the investments they're making in their future and how they're setting it up. It's phenomenal. And I for myself, I wished I'd have had that knowledge when I was young. So it's very important to me to build that foundation and ingrain it in our young people's minds, so they don't wind up, starving at 50 years old. And you see a lot of these, again, going back to some of the things that the young trainers are doing and how they're setting up for their future. I think it's very, very smart. It's very smart. you know.
Yeah, I agree.
Ideally, I love the scenario where these guys get in a position to where they don't necessarily have to have customers, or they can handpick and have a select few of customers, but they're not 100% dependent upon their training operation to make a living. You know, and I don't want to discount that, because there's other guys that are in the trenches slugging it out every day, and we need those people.
Mm-hmm.
Have to have them, and I honestly think there's more customers than there are trainers out there, and the good ones, you know, are successful and will be able to set themselves up. But also, too, I think the way these trainers are starting to assess their business and really take you know, really trying to push customer service and understanding how to accommodate those amateurs and non-pros and work with them. And it's becoming, our industry is becoming more and more refined as we go on,
Right.
and a lot more professional.
Right. And that's why I like being involved with different groups I'm involved in, is because this, to me, I don't want the horse industry to happen when it's happened to us in trades.
Right.
Because people just don't want to physically work anymore, or don't want to work, period.
Yeah.
And there's nothing easy about being a horse trainer. On running a business involves something you got to keep alive every day and well and performing. So that's why I try to be so involved, especially with the youth stuff, because I want to keep regening what has always been in my heart. But, you know, most people got to feel that first before they want it, you know, and I think a lot of people miss that sometimes these days.
You have to love it. You have to absolutely love it, because training horses for a living is hard work. I don't care what anybody says. Whether you have the best horses in the industry or the worst horses, it's all the same amount of work. It's 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and you have to absolutely be in love with what you do. And thank God, to me, I've always maintained that, yes, I'm here to promote the industry and build the industry, but it's actually always been about a higher purpose to me. The horses are paramount. They're very important to me. But even above that is our culture. And you look at the American cowboy, and a lot of people have heard me say this, but there is nothing more iconic American than the American cowboy, with the exception maybe the bald eagle. And
Right.
I've used that phrase a lot, but I've had the opportunity to go all over the world, everywhere, and everybody asks, where are you from? And I say Texas, and the first thing that comes out of their mouth, oh, cowboy. You know, I mean, it is our culture. Other than the Native Americans, who were here obviously before all the Western Europeans came in, it is our only endemic culture we really have in America, and it's unique to us.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have developed that. You know, there's cowboys in South America, cowboys in Australia, but ours is uniquely different.
Right. And one thing I love about our industry that I've been to a jillion rodeos, a jillion horse shows, and we always honor our flag. Mm-hmm. And everybody takes their hat off.
Yep.
You don't see nobody kneeling down. You don't see nobody backing away from that. That is, to me, backs up exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, I think it holds true to, and that's what is so important to me, is the culture we possess, the pride in country and God and family, and those core American values. And that's what, as of late, or not as of late, but here in the past 3, 4, 5 years, we've really tried to push and really tried to let people understand. COVID turned the world upside down, and I think a lot of people hit the reset button. And I wanted to be right there to say, hey, here's a safe place. We're family here, and we take care of each other. And these are our values, and these are what we believe in. And it's a good place to raise your family and have kids involved. Come to one of our shows, watch the kids run around. You see things that a lot of people haven't seen in 20, 30 years. Kids
Right.
running around playing, riding bikes, and they're together. They're not on their phones. They're not
Exactly. That was the key
games.
word.
Yeah.
Yep. And I have new customers that come in or new to the business and stuff like that. I kind of take them around and talk to them about things the best I can explain stuff. And that's one common thing. And they're surprised. It's like, oh, these little 12-year-olds and 15-year-olds they're not looking at their phone while they're walking.
Yeah.
They don't have their phones because they're busy.
Yeah.
They're doing something entertaining, and it's in the rodeo world. It's in everything that's, to me, that horse world does that to these kids.
It's funny. I have friends that live in the city, in the major metro areas, and they have children, and I will talk to them, visit with them. But then I see a kid at a horse show, and we have one young man who I just think the world. He's a great kid. Comes up, gives you a firm handshake, looks you in the eye. Yes, sir. No, sir. Whereas a lot of these kids growing up in the city, they can't even hold eye contact with you. Or you can't even have a conversation with them. And I think it's going to be a disservice because we're creating a society that is not going to be able to effectively communicate with each other.
No, it's already that way in a lot of areas anyways.
Yeah.
But you go back to the iconic deal about the American cowboy and all that, but I feel like there's been a lot of people coming in the horse market. A lot of people say it's Yellowstone, but I think a lot of it too is they feel comfortable being around the cowboy in industry. Yeah. They want to be involved. They want to inject in it because they see us as normal, and that's what's always been around.
We're safe. We're protected. Right. Yep. You're in good hands when you're around us.
Right.
I've talked about this a lot, and a lot of people have heard it, and I'm not going to dive deep off into it. But if you look at the timeline of the way our country has happened, and let's say you go back to the early 1900s, post World War I, and the influence that had on the world at that time. Shortly after that was the advent of the silent movie Cowboy. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward a little bit, come out of World War II, then you had Roy Rogers, the Lone Ranger, all that. Follow up to the 60s, the 70s. I am the last generation that grew up where there was a Western on every single night.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally, sometimes 2 a night. Fast forward to the 80s, Carter administration, fuel embargo, all the economy was horrible. Urban Cowboy comes out, everybody wants to play cowboy, again. To nowadays, you have this global pandemic, the government's a wreck, the economy's a wreck. This is a reset that happens. It's a cycle that happens every year, every few years, that people come back and attach to this because it is a safe place. The migration out of the major metro areas to more rural America was tremendous in 2020 and 2021 because people were concerned. My wife works in the farm and ranch retail business, and they manage about 1,500 stores across North America. They were deemed essential business. Their best year ever was in 2020. Mm-hmm. People were coming in and they're buying chicken coops and they're buying feeders and they're buying all this stuff because they bought houses out in the country and built places and decided to raise their kids. And where this all ties to and where it's good for us is like everybody moves out to the country. They want to get the chickens, they get the pickup truck, Next thing they want to get is a horse, and I'm trying to direct them to us because we just will continue to perpetuate that comfort zone, the safe haven of being involved with that lifestyle and our people.
And you've probably heard this about dealing with people that are new to the industry. This happened, same exact thing. When COVID happened, our phone's in the ring for a month. I was scared. I've never been scared of nothing in my life. I was scared that, when that was going on. But a week after that 4-week time period, everybody wanted to go rural America. Yeah. They want to build a barnuminium. They want to build a barn. They want a tractor. They want, horse, whatever. And as I got to meet these people that were so green to the business, I spent a lot of time just working with them to let, they didn't know when a tractor regen and what it was doing. They thought it was fixing to explode. Just stuff like that. But we worked with our clients to where they didn't get back out of it.
Right.
And I think that's where people need to do those kind of things is where when you do get somebody in the industry, stay with them as long as you can with appropriate time for both of you. But, give them that time and that experience where they'll keep doing it.
Yeah.
Not get scared of it. Like, this is a horse. When we get kids or get somebody new to it, we put them on something that just dead-sided, easy going.
Babysitter.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't go in there and put them on the fastest, wildest thing they got because when they're not going to ever want to do it again. And I feel like that's the same way with everything in rural America. It needs to be treated when you're selling a product or building something for somebody or selling a horse to somebody. I think people are doing a better job at that have been in the industry.
You know, it's like everything else. If you're used to raising animals or used to raising kids, you have to nurture them and you have to protect them. And these are extended members of our family. And they may be new introductions, and they may wear a goofy hat or have the wrong boots on or their pants are too short. All those things we chuckle at when they show up. But it's our responsibility to hook up with them and get them pointed in the right direction and not drive them away. And I think NCHA does a pretty good job with that. I think our culture in general does a pretty good job with it. But it's something to be aware of when they do show up.
Yeah. How long have you been running the NCHA?
I'll be 5 years at the end of this year. I think I'm the third longest running executive director in history, and because they went through a bunch of them. But it's been a real good run so far, and I'm not done yet. We got a lot of stuff to do. I've got a phenomenal team.
You do.
We put together
really do.
a really great team. Everybody kind of runs their point of the business, and I'll let them do it. And we've been able to really grow our events and do a lot of the things that this association needed. Yeah. And I'm very fortunate, and I couldn't do it without my team. But also too, I've been able to work with some officers and directors for this association that had a vision to kind of make this what it needed to be, and fortunately brought me on, and then were receptive to some of the changes that we needed to make.
Right. Well, I guess it's been 4 or 5 years ago. I remember when I haven't been around in the cutting industry in a while, and I just happened to be across the street doing something, and I walked over there during y'all's futurity. It was 4 or 5 years ago. The trade show was literally like 2 hours, I think.
Yeah.
It was just, there was not a lot of participation. And now you walk in there and it's like what it used to be to me when I was a kid, and it's like, you've done a great job of putting your team and yourself, putting it back together to me, where I feel like it's where it used to be a long time ago.
To backtrack a little bit and talk about my early years, and when I used to come over to the futurity in the 80s, when I was working in retail and kind of around the Carter family and involved with that. I remember what it used to be like, and it was cool. It was electric in that arena.
It was,
and it was packed, and it was glamorous too. I mean, they talk about the people that would show up for it, and the fashion and the power brokers of the country being in that building, but right beside them are dyed-in-the-wool hardcore ranch cowboys, and it was just a really cool mix of people. And you could not walk down that back aisle behind the box seats because it was shoulder to shoulder, and people would stand up the wall. And we're starting to see that again, and it's exciting. It's exciting, and I hope it maintains for a while. We're bringing as many people as we can into the sport, and across all levels, not just the limited aged events and not just the Triple Crown events. We're heavily pushing on our weekend side, heavily pushing on our youth side. I want this to build to be the biggest membership we've ever had, and we're knocking on the door of it. And there's a lot of really good energy. Yes, Yellowstone has been a big help. There's a lot of things that are happening in culture right now that's drawing a lot of attention to us, and I don't discount that, but also we need to be aware of that and successfully manage that as we move forward. All of us do. Yeah.
And I as a pack, and that's what when I travel these trade shows. I go we have a little rodeo team, and I go to the finals, junior high and high school finals. I go and talk and meet with all of them and spend some time. That really surprises kids. That somebody that they barely know, but they know is represented by us, to go out and see them perform on that level. And I think it means a lot to them and the kids. But one thing I did notice at the high school finals this year, how large the cutting part of it was.
Yeah, we're coming back. We, for a long time that spot partnership with National High School Rodeo languished a little bit. And I realized the association was kind of in a survival mode and they needed to focus on what they were doing. But now that we've been able to kind of turn the corner, we've started to put more emphasis on that. We go out and we conduct a clinic. It doubled in capacity this year from last year. Yeah, I mean, we put it out online to sign up, and it's full in 30 minutes. And there's, I'm not sure if a lot of people know this, but cutting was one of the original events in high school rodeo. It predates team roping. It predates a lot of barrels and a lot of stuff like that were not original events, but it was one of the original events. And I still continually push to get cutting put back in, accounting for the all around. I think it would help us because one of the things I do see, and I think it's a great cultivation ground for bringing members in, not just to our youth program, but and I can talk a little bit about this in a little bit, my background with another company and our youth marketing efforts, but a lot of people's lifelong habits get developed between the ages of 13 and 23. So you have these kids that maybe they have their first experience on a cutting horse as a freshman in high school. They ride all 4 years. They hang it up to go to college, start a family, work. They get out of school. You can't be riding saddle broncs and bulls and even roping or running barrels. When you get the kids raised and get them out of school, you might want to get back involved in horses. And I actually see this. I saw it when I ran cow horse. I saw it here. There was a huge amount of middle-aged women, between the ages of like 40 and 60 that were coming in. And it was the same story that I kept hearing. I grew up riding horses, or I used to rodeo in high school, or I was involved doing something with horses when I was a young kid, and I gave it up. I went to school, I got married, I raised my kids, they went off to college, and now I'm looking for something to do. And here we are.
Yep.
And that's why the female component of cutting is probably the fastest growing demographic we're seeing right now. And I think it's real important to seed that with these young people because, again, going back to cutting something, it can be pretty much a lifelong sport.
That's true. So before you mentioned you worked at another place you look at the youth development side of whatever. Is that Red Bull?
Yes, sir.
Okay. See, that surprised me. When somebody says you worked at Red Bull, I'm thinking you're flying planes and doing some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But
we got to do a lot of fun stuff.
I bet.
Yeah.
What did you do for them?
I was a marketing. Well, I started as an event manager, logistics manager. So I used to go all over the country and set up for a lot of the X Games stuff and a lot of the unique events, and then later moved into a full marketing role. But obviously, Red Bull was heavy focused on young people and promoting towards young people, both high school and college age. But got to produce some really phenomenal events. Everything from in the motorsports world to, water sports, the extreme X Games style stuff. Did quite a bit. Airplane races, like you were talking about. That was one of the projects that I worked on.
So looking at running or being involved in that type of business versus where you're at today, you see some things cross over between the two?
Yeah, I brought a lot of that mentality. I was fortunate enough to go to work for Red Bull early on, kind of when they were getting a foothold in North America, because Red Bull is a European company. They're out of Austria, and the way they came into the States was different than most other companies. The way they launched it, they actually started on the West Coast and moved east.
Oh, really?
So Red Bull distribution hit Texas before it hit New York and Florida. So they did a lot of things, and they were different, but I don't think they were bad. I believe Red Bull set the tone for what we all see as new age marketing now. The advent of social media and a lot of the way the promotions and guerrilla marketing and a lot of the ways that works were established by Red Bull. And within reason, I try and bring a little bit of that to the equine industry and have implemented some of that stuff.
Sure.
You know, it's hard to do pyro and explosions and, you know, a lot of stuff at a horse show.
Yeah.
We're working towards to building our production at our events. Was able to do some of that at the cow horse. You see it at the World's Greatest Horseman when you watch it now compared to what it was, you know, back in 2012 and 2013. We added a lot of heavy production elements to it, you know, music and dramatics and video. And I am also a big video content guy, which I think you're seeing a lot of that come out now through NCHA, and we work on a lot of that stuff because Red Bull obviously taught me that content was king. We had an inside joke at the company that we were a content company that sold a drink on the side.
That's funny. So you did Red Bull and then go the NRCHA?
Yeah.
After that, and then NCHA now?
Yes, sir.
So how many you have on your team right now? Roundabouts.
We got about 22 people. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then some contract help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're all, you know, what's funny is I hear about your personality, and I seem like we're a lot alike. I'm probably a little more vocal and out there than you are about my day-to-day things, but I see our team kind of as the same. You know, I've never been around anybody in your team, and I couldn't sit there and talk to you or wasn't open to have a conversation, or they worked hard. You know, I feel like when I see all these girls and boys, you know, running around, they're always busy during these shows, and it's a long month or so.
It's a marathon.
They're married to
Yeah.
Will Rogers,
Yep.
pretty much. So I think that's pretty cool. So if you had to pick your, let's go with the alive, your most favorite stud on the market right now. I don't know if that's gonna get too political.
I am not going to answer that.
Not gonna answer that one.
They are all my favorite.
Well, fair enough. Okay, not alive. Like your old school. What's the old school stud or horse that you like a lot? That
I mean, it depends on how far you want to go back. Highbrow Cat, obviously, it's been an industry changer. You know.
yeah.
I mean, you look at all the offspring that trace back to him. It's huge.
I got you. Yeah, I ask everybody I do this with because I like to bring. There's some people that have, you know, certain horses that they've always idolized their whole life or thought about or.
Yeah, I have a funny take on it because there's one stud that I personally really like that I would like to breed some of my personal mares to, and he was not a great cutting horse stud. He's a pretty good cow horse stud, but that's Woody B. Tough. And you look at him, you look at his conformation, nice looking horse, but I will tell you his offspring is what I like. They're short back, they're leggy, thin throat latch, things that I look for in a horse, what I'm used to looking for in a horse. I've seen the way those horses perform. And they're a little big to get around in the cutting pen, but for me personally, and I'm not talking about taking it to the cutting pen, but something that I would use, that's kind of a horse that I look at.
I got you. Most of mine are on foundation bred, you know, all different ones. But I ask people that just to see if I learned something new. So, yeah. And I did. I mean, I guess learn new stuff, ask these kind of questions. So, where do you see the NCHA in 5 years from now?
Hopefully bigger and better than we've ever been. I mean, we are, again, I go back to what's happening in pop culture right now and some of the things we've seen here as of recent. You know, we've got a lot of attention on us, and we need to be able to take advantage of that. We are currently working on our own internal docuseries right now. I've got the first episode cut. We are shopping that to some various networks. It's going to be quite compelling. It's not sugar-coated. It's not a feel-good. It's not staged. It's not rehearsed. It's unscripted and it's very blunt and honest, but it also showcases exactly who and how our people interact and what our cutting world is about. And I'm excuse me, I'm excited to roll it out. I gave a teaser of it at the convention, and we left it with kind of a cliffhanger, and so we're anxious to get it started.
Yeah, I think that helps people too that are new to the industry to try to understand stuff.
Yeah.
And get out there in front of it where they know exactly what they're looking at, so they know what questions they don't are not answered that need to be asked. So
It showcases a lot of our personalities, and the vision for the series is not always the biggest and the best in our industry. This is something I talk about, and I touched on it earlier about how we're really pushing to promote all sides of our industry, because cutting is actually, from a participant standpoint, it's pretty easy to get started in. If you can sit on a horse, we can get you to the pen. We can get you cutting.
right.
I have people from all walks of life that do this, and unfortunately, we don't always showcase the day-to-day, and we're not able to. I'm trying to change that a little bit and highlight it more. I refer to this individual a lot. She's a 911 operator in Dallas and has a little 2-horse trailer and hooks it up to her Tahoe every weekend and hauls and goes and cuts and comes back, and she cuts the flag in her backyard, and those are the stories that I want to tell, because that's relative to a lot of people.
It is.
Not flying in your jet and hopping off in Vegas and getting on a $2 million horse at the South Point and showing for 2.5 minutes, and then that's some people too, but there's more of the other side
right.
than the other,
The
and then
horse.
there's a lot in the middle.
Right.
A lot in the middle.
I agree with that.
It's having a horse, it doesn't cost me any more selling a cutter than it does a polo horse, a rope horse, a barrel horse. We're accessible, and that's what I really want to push. Is this is not as hard as you think, and that is the problem. Is the horse industry has not done a good job of allowing access to our specific disciplines, because everybody feels like it's this big prohibited step to go from living in the city to stepping on a horse and actually competing and being involved in it. And we need to bridge that gap
100%.
and let people know how easy it really is.
Right. Don't be intimidated by us.
Right.
Just
Right.
ask questions. We'll help you any way we can.
Well, we'll get you on.
Yeah. But I think one prime, and I'm very, very passionate about this, what y'all have done with the military cutting.
Yes, sir.
That's a prime example of getting somebody on a horse and doing something in a discipline that's never done it before.
That's exactly why we do it. I mean, that group is very close to me. I specifically utilized the special operations community because, if you understand the background of how that came about, and we worked with a really great organization called Brave Hearts for many years in producing a military cutting. And it was good. It was good, but it was logistically difficult for the NCHA, the staff, the trainers, and everybody involved. And it was about a 2-week deal, and a lot of people, a lot of mobilization, and getting everybody involved. And I said, how can we take this and condense it down and have boom, 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 go from zero to hero, in the course of 72 hours. And there's few people, and a lot of the military takes direction very well, but I knew, having previous relations with the special operations community, I knew I could give these guys direction. If they've never ridden before, the minute they get there, they're on a horse, they're working the flag. And just this last event, there was a guy that rode that had never ridden horses before, ever. And he goes out there, and he puts a run down. Looked good. Looked like he should have been cutting in the limited open, But they're athletic, they're smart, they take direction, they understand, of you telling them something and how to process that. And I think in a similar fashion, that is something that I wanted to express. Anybody out there, if you devote your time and attention to this, we can get you there.
Get you there. And I think, I didn't get to spend a whole lot of time when we went out to the range, and they were actually teaching us,
Yeah.
or working with us to shoot some long range stuff. And there's a lot I learned, and I've been shooting a gun for 20 years, but just things they walk you through and how calm they were about it, and got you through stuff. But when I was leaving there, I got a little, not emotional, but I started thinking, I was like, who I was really around.
Yeah.
I mean, we're around heroes.
Yeah.
And I didn't think them enough, thinking about all the stuff they just worked with us on and who they were, and what they've done for us as a country.
Well, we do that shooting exercise for a couple of reasons. One is to thank our people like you who are sponsors of the NCHA and let them have a unique experience that you couldn't just get off the street. I can send you gift baskets all day.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not going to be the same as,
Sure.
Going out there and hanging out with these guys. But I wanted it to be kind of a flip check for them, because there's all this unknown stimulus going on one day, and then boom, they're right back where they're super comfortable. And now they're the teacher, and now they're talking people through that. And what that does mentally for those guys, it allows them to come back in and reprocess that information. And now I feel more comfortable. Now it's time to compete. I'm good. I know these people. I'm solid. I'm confident. Let's go have a good run. And you actually see it.
Yeah.
There is one guy in there, and they all have unique stories. And I visited with them all in depth. And there was one guy that joined us this year that I met and actually become really good friends with. Talked to him a lot. And he is going back and forth to the Ukraine and some other hot spots, doing some contract work right now. But as of this morning, he is out at Bruce Marines riding with Bruce right now.
Oh, wow.
And this guy, if you understand his background, he was a firefighter, post 9/11, joined the military like a lot of these guys did, and got into the Special Force, Green Beret, went through the Q course, trained, assigned to 10th Group, and then they got assigned to Afghanistan. And he was a medic, and they were doing an assault on a Taliban prison. He kicks the door open, IED goes off, and a 3-story building collapses on top of him. Wow. Breaks his back, his neck, his pelvis, everything. They airlift him to Germany, and the doctor tells him that he may never walk again. And he laid in bed for over 6 months, and he said he felt his hand moved, and he goes, I can work with that. And he showed at the event.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that's what this program's about. And a lot of these guys are dealing with a lot of things, okay? And I understand it. And part of this, they're fresh back, Mm-hmm. They've been back for a couple of years, 2, 3, 4 years. But they still deal with the daily, thoughts, and this is hitting the reset button for them.
Right.
You now have a new mission.
Right.
And this is your objective. And the good thing is our trainers are really good at giving instruction and barking orders.
Yeah.
So it feels like, there's some structure around it, and wow, this is what I'm going to focus on. But because I will tell you, I have not had one guy that has come in and done this and said, I didn't want to pursue it further, or I don't want to do it again. They have all, and I talk to them all. And it's like, if they're in remote areas or whatever, they're like, who can I talk to? Where can I go? How can I practice? I have one guy that's going down. He lives in South Carolina. He's going down to Augusta and riding with some people there. A couple of guys in Colorado. Obviously a bunch in Texas. I had lunch with one of the guys yesterday who's been going for the past 2 years, once or twice a week, riding with these guys, and it's really, it's been life-changing for some of these people, because one of the individuals, I mean, has decided he's moving here and he's going to buy a place and build it and wants to get involved in cutting.
Yeah, I think that's very unique, and I want people to know about it because when y'all invited me to go out there, I was like, okay, we'll go out there and shoot. But once I got out there and getting involved in it, I'm like, this is pretty cool. And as I drove off, I wish I would have shook everybody's hand when I was there.
Yeah,
and just tell them thank you. But I feel like you would think meeting a guy like that, they would be intimidating or not approachable. Every one of them, they were. And you would think that, but I think that's what some people are about our industry.
We're all people,
right?
And we all, if you look at these guys, we all share. Again, it goes back to core values and our culture, and that's also what makes them feel good about this.
Right?
I mean, they may love cutting and they may love the competition aspect, but if we're not welcoming to that, they won't stick around. You know? So, again, I think it speaks volumes as to who NCHA is as an organization, but even further, who our people are.
Yep, I agree. Well, Jay, we're going to wrap this up. This has been a great.
I really enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it too. I was a little bit. I'll be honest. I was a little nervous. We catch each other and chat up once in a while, but I hadn't spent a lot of time with each other. But I've heard a lot of stories about you, and I want to thank you for what you've done with the NCHA.
Thank you. Don't believe everything you hear.
We didn't get into some of the stuff on that. We'll do that.
We can do that on episode 2.
Yeah, you go. Yep. Thank you again, sir.
You, Brad.
Each and every Tuesday, catch a new episode of Grit Branded as we dive into stories from all walks of life in the hopes of you discovering what your grit is.